no. This what time? Sorry.
I don't know. I didn't know it was like you have it at 11 a.m.
No, it's not.
Kind of drink.
It's not a morning thing. I mean, to be fair, I haven't had one in a little while. It's a summer thing for me. But actually, this is the perfect morning for it. Like, my mouth is so dry right now. Like, you know, I was wondering when I said, like, oh, what do you want to bring? To bring a supermalt. I was like, is he going to know what a supermalt is?
But I thought, maybe today's the day. Like, because every year I like something new.
Is it the day?
It actually tastes better than last time I drank it.
It needs to be ice cold. It needs to be ice cold because, you know, I had that relationship with supermalt as well because, you know, my granddad used to drink it a lot when I was young. I'm mixed British and Jamaican.
What, you used to drink what?
Supermalt.
A lot?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and I used to try it when my granddad used to drink it and I'd be like, nah, this is not the one. But then, intermittently throughout the years, a friend of mine would be like, yo, are you ready? Are you ready? And I'd try supermalt and then I'd be like, nah. Throughout the years of being in London, and then I was in a park one summer, who was sipping the supermalt. I was like, damn, that looks good. Tried it and I was like, oh my God, today is a day.
How old were you?
Probably like 23, 24. That's
23, 24?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like me with Spanish ham. I was 18.
Spanish ham?
Or like jamón serrano.
Oh, right, okay.
And it's like a typical Spanish thing. Blah, blah, blah. And it's
Are you Spanish?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Spanish Italian.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I grew up in Spain and kind of in the Basque Country. And then jamón serrano is like the thing you eat everywhere because it's also cold. You can eat it as a sandwich. Never liked it in my life. I think I was 18. I was like, this is actually good.
Do you know what? It's usually people have that relationship with olives.
Oh, I liked olives this year for the first time.
But yeah, I think when I was younger, you know, when obviously you got an older siblings, especially when you got a brother that you look up to, you just, you know, you like or dislike whatever they like. So I feel like when I was younger, I just said I didn't like whatever my brother.
What's your older brother?
My older brother, yeah. So if he didn't like it, I'd be like, I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's not cool or something. I think it was olives and mushrooms. He still doesn't like olives or mushrooms. I love olives and mushrooms.
Olives and mushrooms?
Yeah.
All together?
Well, yeah, together.
Thing?
Yeah, you can get like the deli, you know, you get like the Turkish delis and they do like the mix, like olives, you get the olives with the garlic or the olives with the pepper, you get olives and mushrooms.
Yeah, the pickle things now, like they're not my thing.
Nah, not your jam.
Like, no, like there were the candy stores in Spain and then there's always like the pickle section.
Oh, I bet you got in Spain, I bet they have the... God.
Well, good candy. Well, a lot of sweets.
No, like good delis with like olives and all of that stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is the bar.
Oh yeah, true.
You don't really have it in the supermarket maybe. Well, I'll say it's good. I like it today. I like it for some reason, and it's not going bad with the coffee, which is weird.
Well, I'm not. I'm taking a little. I'm coming to the coffee in a minute. I can't mix the two. Supermarket. Whoa.
Well, I'm not mixing it, but just in my.
Watch your stomach.
Okay. Well, I think maybe you can, if you want to introduce yourself.
Oh, right, okay. God, where do I start? Okay, so, well, I'm Christian Cassiel, and I'm a photographer. I guess I do primarily portrait photography, but it spans documentary, travel, interior, bit of everything really. Kind of my attention's a bit all over the place, so it's kind of whatever piques my interest in that moment, I suppose, or whatever catches my attention. But I guess I'm mostly known for my portraiture work, I would say. And 3 years ago, during COVID times, I started to collect antique objects, like ceramics, some African pieces. I began a studio space called Seed Archives, or Seed. Yeah, I started to kind of move from, well, photography is still a big part of my practice and a big part of Seed, but start collecting and selling these objects. And then around about a year ago, I started to explore kind of African material cultures more. I went to Gambia, spent a month, 2 months between the Gambia and Senegal, and then started to kind of turn my research more towards like objects and art in Africa, and then started to collect books. And now I run a sort of like a part-time library and research space, which I've been doing for the past year now. So it kind of, I started scanning books. I picked up my first book on Nigerian art and culture while I was buying antiques in Ramsgate. This time last year, it was last November.
Yeah.
I was buying antiques and I was I just seen this pile of old books, and it was this a copy of The Living Arts of Nigeria by William Vagg, and I just thought it was a beautiful book. I was going through the pages, the illustrations, and I just thought people might want to see this stuff, so I started scanning the books and sharing them on Instagram, and then people started to reach out, and here we are.
Because people wanted art.
Yeah, I mean, people wanted to access books on African art and culture. All things relating to their heritage, not only African, Caribbean culture, obviously, people across the diaspora wanting to reconnect to ideas and old ideas and practices that I guess are being lost to some people. And
is it rare?
I didn't. Before I started Seed, I wasn't aware of what was already available, what was or wasn't available to people. I didn't start collecting books and then be like, oh, is someone else collecting books, or is there a space kind of dedicated to African and Caribbean culture? I'm sure there's obviously there's tons of library spaces across London where there's sections, but I've had quite a few people come through here and say they've never seen such a dedicated or condensed collection of books on like African art and culture. So that really surprised me, actually.
What do you mean by section?
Like a section in a library. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't know, because I'm also the irony is that I've not visited many library spaces. I don't really know what's going on in that space. Seed is just made up of me it's just liking nice things, really. It's just objects and things that fascinate me, and placing them in a way that is pleasing to people. And then also the books, kind of, people go to library spaces or institutions which I guess maybe might be quite sterile in their approach. It's just things just lumped in a corner. But I guess I like to make it saying things lumped in a corner, it looks really bad right now, but I need to get some new shelving.
No, what do you mean? What's the problem with lumped in a corner?
I mean...
Is it a matter of that it's piled up? Is that what the...
Yeah, I mean, I get overwhelmed easily by information, and people do, even really... I have multiple PhD researchers that come here to use the space on a regular basis. And even people who are hardcore academics get overwhelmed by information. It's not... I feel like especially when it comes to books, people just get tired out easily, like, yeah, but they just get overstimulated. I kind of like to, with Seed, I like to break things up. So I like to put, books in certain corners, and, you've got to... It's like... Yeah, a bit of, not a game, but, it just makes things a little more engaging rather than sifting through, piles and piles of books. That is not enjoyable to go through. So I kind of say, for example, on this...
It's more scary because everything might fall.
Oh, yeah, no, and there's definitely... I don't have insurance as well, so... so that I'm like, when I get these tiny people come in to try reach the top shelves, I'm like, please do not, let me... help you get these books down, because you're gonna hurt yourself, and I can't afford for you to help yourself.
Banned.
Yeah, no, seriously, everything and
6 foot. All these people 6 foot or above.
Yeah, and then into the ceramics, and then knock, like some chain effect. Everything just falls down. But for example, this stool here with this kind of... This was actually... A lot of these books was donated by one collector. It's mainly dedicated to all textiles across West Africa. So I don't know. It's just nice. I feel like it's just nicely presented. So when someone comes in and they're doing textile research, I'm like, there's a beautiful stool there, and it's all dedicated to textiles in Africa.
It's interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm here and I'm scared of just turning around, because I feel like I'm gonna hate everything. Feels very precious and everything looks very nice, which I think is cool. At the same time, I'm gonna stay still.
No, if you don't break it, I will. Do you know what? Actually, I smashed one of my favourite vases the other week.
What is a
Favourite. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, you can't. Also, my Yorkshire accent might throw you off. A vase, basically, this really old one that I had for years, like one of the earliest things that I bought, and I stupidly put stuff on the shelves with the books, and then the vase, it was a tiny little pot thing, and it was hidden behind one of the books, and I was looking for this book, and I just knocked it over straight, like absolutely obliterated.
Oh.
And I'm not, the thing is, I was angry at myself, but when it comes to the objects, I'm really not that bothered, to be honest. Like, I have children in here sometimes as well, and I encourage people that have
tiny people.
There's a friend of mine who comes to do her research here. She brings her gigantic poodle. She's got this massive poodle called Django, and it blends in. It looks like the rug. It looks like a carpet. Seed is a place where, you know, people can just come and feel free, and not like, I encourage people to touch things and pick things up and move things around. Even though I do love objects and like beautiful things, you know, they're just things at the same time. I don't think we should get too caught up and be too materialistic at the same time. Just enjoy things while enjoy the things while they're there, basically.
I guess because if not, it becomes like a museum.
Yeah, no, see, that's a whole other conversation as well, moving away from that, you know.
So it's a purpose. So it's on purpose.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think because someone replied to one of my stories when I was sharing some objects or something, and he was like, Seed, and he was kind of like pointing out the steps for Seed to say what it is now and what it could be in terms of, you know, like a museum. But I do get people...
So they recommend you? Was it like an advice?
No, they just to say that could be the vision for it. Do you know what I mean?
Cool.
But I guess in terms of, in the unconventional way, it kind of does look like a museum. There's just like stats, but without the barriers, without the containers. I feel like there needs to be more engagement. Objects need to be free. People need to engage with things like on their own terms and like not be policed. I feel like it's particularly frustrating with people, especially when speaking particularly about African kind of art and culture, like African heritage objects, cultural objects. You know, the way museums have, the history of museums and taking, and that whole conversation with looting. I feel like people, you know, of African heritage need to be able to access things in a way that, it's just more freeing, I suppose, and in a way where they can actually, I feel like, you know, you come into certain spaces and it's always you're shown a particular narrative about things, do you know what I mean? Objects in certain spaces, and you're not able to engage or learn you're not able to actually learn or interact with objects in the way they're meant to be, do you know what I mean? Like in the correct context, I suppose.
You mean so how these objects are used or used to be used or are used, or what do you mean by the context?
I mean you're not going to engage with all objects the way they, you know, sometimes I guess the context changes over time and things, culture changes, traditions change as well. But I think it's more the idea of someone else taking something that belonged to a culture or community you might identify with or have lost connections with, and then someone else is telling you this is how it's meant to be experienced. When there's still, and also the idea when certain things are in museums in the West, it kind of skews your perception because it makes you think that these traditions are no longer practiced as well. There's certain traditions in African cultures that are in objects relating to those traditions that are in museums, and it makes the viewer think that these are ancient traditions, or it's archaeology almost. Do you know what I mean? When they're actually living cultures, living people, and practices that are still, you know, that still continue today as well. So.
Yeah, I mean that's what I read on that post. There's one post where you're talking about that first book you bought, and the emphasis on the word living. No, because the book is called living art,
the living arts of Nigeria.
and that for you the emphasis, like there's something special or like different about the word living.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah, I
about
mean,
it.
I think, going back to what I was just saying, really, I suppose it's just bringing emphasis to people or highlighting to people that all of these traditions and cultures are still happening. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, I feel like there's, when it comes to African objects, especially, when I, for example, when I was collecting things earlier on in the day, and I was collecting certain objects and figures, even like some of the pieces I've got here, and I was asking about certain objects, say from dealers I was buying in just random markets in East London, and I'd be like, I'd want to know a little bit more about the objects that was being sold to me, basically. And I feel like a lot of dealers kind of have like a blanket kind of term, or they'll just say it's some the term that they use is like some like fetish idol or
Fetish idol.
yeah, that's what they call it. That's what they call them, like to say like things to do with like they'll call it a fetish or like a fertility doll. That's what the term they use. I think it's a Portuguese term actually, fetish relating, I can't remember the tracking of the term, but it's relating to like a magical object, something that they perceive to be like relating to witchcraft or magic in like African cultures. And I kind of wanted to, I feel like you didn't really need to do so much deep research to figure out where the object actually came from and what it actually meant and how it was supposed to be used.
Yeah, because it's like a vague.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this probably was for magic. Yes, okay.
Yeah,
it's
no,
like they don't even try.
Or voodoo.
Yeah, voodoo.
But I'd have people, I've done some, like kind of curated some library spaces over the past year, and I've had people come in and relating to their own cultures. I'm not trying to tell people about their own cultures. I'm just presenting the information. Do you know what I mean? I just put the objects in the place and the books, and I just want people to be able to engage in it in any way they want. But I had some, even say for example the fertility dolls I've got on the windowsill there. They're called Akawaba, and they're from the Ashanti people in Ghana. And basically, just learning about the folklore of the dolls, the history, where it started. I think it's this kind of moving away from that, the stigma of like dark Africa, dark magic, when there's just really beautiful tales about these objects, and I've just been enjoying sharing that with people. And rather than people just coming in and being like, that's voodoo, I wouldn't have that in my house or whatever, do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because, for example, I went to the bus.
No, wait till the sirens come.
That I remember I went to Tate to see this, I talked about these two artists, which I think are European, but like of African descent. Anyways, and there was a discussion, and then there was someone in the crowd, I think a British person. This person and the public was like, I'm assuming Black British, and they were like, oh, why doesn't, I think it was like longing, in a way of longing, like, oh, do you think in Africa why there's no appreciation? Because there's no, in his view, I understood was like, oh, there's no museums, or like there's no like art like is done in the West, in his mind again. I'm not saying, and the response was very interesting because one of the artists was saying, actually, like he's just the artist in the city. So he's actually, there's this weird thing, and I've noticed it also, especially in the UK, where there is a weird, at some point, I don't know when, 20th century maybe, there was like a separation of like, okay, art has to go in galleries, museums, and it stops serving a purpose.
Right,
do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he was talking about like, oh, there's like things that are objects or even paintings or things that are used for, they have a social purpose and maybe when you come from outside you can see it. But I don't know, I thought it was interesting, and I think it goes back, I feel like, to this idea of like the living art, and I think here is art is quite sanitized, because there's this like, it has to be in a gallery, or do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, there is definitely still, it's not that I guess like cultural objects and art are being separated on the continent. I suppose, there's a space for, there's tons of museums across like West Africa with cultural objects, but then there's also still all the practices that go alongside. I think there's definitely spaces where they have things showing objects of how certain people used to do certain things, certain practices, and then there's also still but they'll also still highlight all the people and all the cultures still practicing these things. I guess that's in the way, when you're talking about the way we display art and objects in the West, in obviously around UK or across Europe, is that it's not, there's not that intention of art and objects for there's not much social purpose for it, in terms of, we like to just put things behind a glass, put things on a white wall, in a clear glass case, and just, everything is just kind of mute, do you know what I mean? There's around whatever object we're supposed to be viewing, and over time, I mean, historically that's been applied to objects taken from the continent, but we just can't, things are not meant to be displayed in that way, do you know what I mean? Things are not, the thing is, what people don't understand as well about African objects and art, not all of it, I mean, I say art quite loosely, because sometimes they're not made for the purposes of art, they're made for...
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about now.
Yeah,
like
the
what
objects
the purpose...
with functionality. It's more about the functionality rather than the art form. We just view everything as art, you know what I mean? But we focus less on the functionality and more of it's kind of like exotic form.
Yeah, because I think we're removed. So, for example, because I don't think we have to go that far to. For me, I go to Sevilla.
Yeah.
I went recently.
You went to?
Seville.
Oh, right, okay.
And I was like, I'm amazed. Like, I would really recommend it, because like you go down the street and there's these paintings of Christ everywhere, but like everything is very beautiful. And I feel like it's simply that for me, if you tell an old lady there, it's like, oh my God, this painting, and she'd be like, yeah, it's the one, it's my church, I go here every day, that's the painting. Or like if I bring a friend of mine to my town, they'll be like, oh, this is very interesting. How is this? Why do you guys use these chairs?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, it's just a chair. But I think it's when you're removed of like
out of the context,
everyday use and some, and I think that happens with vintage things, when like suddenly things kind of go off. For example, with photography, I think that once digital was the main thing, I feel like then is when people are like, actually, the grain in film, which was, no one wanted grain before, I think, by what I understand.
Yeah.
Like the idea was like the less grain, the less, and now it's like, oh, let's get that.
Yeah, someone was...
or the edges.
It's so funny. I was hired to do some like interior stuff for this artist, like this artist studio. And that's so funny that you remind me of that. She was like, I got on... I tried to, because she liked my work. I went and did some portraits of the artist for Financial Times, and obviously I shoot on medium format, handprint all my own work, and but I wasn't going to do this space. The budget that they'd given me, I was like, well, I'm not shooting this on film, basically, and so I tried to obviously emulate it. I tried to do it in Lightroom, and I was thinking, God, I rarely do that, but I'm like, oh, I did a really good job here. I was like really proud of myself. I was like, I sent it to a friend and was like, oh, can you tell the difference? It was like, oh, this is pretty good. And then I got an email back from the PR company saying, would it be possible to make these a bit grainier, please? I was like, fuck's sake.
Yeah. But
I'm allowed to swear.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Alright, okay.
I mean,
Oh, you keep it PG.
there's no. I don't know how many people listen to it. I don't think any of them is children, so I think it's okay.
Alright,
I think
okay.
we're good.
Once you start getting the complaints now.
Yeah, no, but I mean, again, yeah, I feel like suddenly it's like, now that you're not forced to use this thing, or like the grain is not a limitation, suddenly it's like, oh my god, I feel like that happened with painting too, I think, like, the abstract painting came because suddenly there was photographs, and I was like, well, there's no practical use to painting anymore. So now we can actually enjoy kind of the edges of this thing. But yeah, and I guess I was interested in, like, when you started having an interest in, like, art.
I mean, I guess I've always been interested in art throughout my whole life. I can't say, I've never been one of those, and not art in terms of painting. Like, I've never really been. I'm more interested in, like, my focus because. Sorry, you probably need to give you a wider context. I actually began as a photographer and doing nature photography.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I was really young, like flower, I used to love like macro flower.
Oh yeah, I got some questions about plants.
Yeah, we'll go to that. So that's how it started really. When I was about 13, my mum got me this. I never remember. It was called a Canon Ixus 30. It was like a point and shoot digital camera, but it was tiny. But the macro setting on this camera was so good, and I remember just being like, yeah, this tiny. It was like the size of like it was tiny, bro. It was like the size of like a credit card or whatever, and I'm like sneaking up on like butterflies. Like when I'm 13, like loving it. Had a Flickr account.
Yes.
Used to love that.
Compulsory.
Used to love that shit. It was so good. Yeah, and I remember like showing off to my teachers, being like, "Oh, look at this butterfly snaps and like all these flowers and all of this stuff." So.
So you got them? Do you print them?
No, I didn't print them. That's what I'd be doing in IT class at school. I'd be like organising my folders. Yeah, and they'd be like, just do some work, man. They'd be like, do some work. In fact,
it wasn't even for.
They didn't even. No. They didn't even. I was in like IT. They didn't even believe they were my pictures.
No.
That's
so sad. I'm sorry. It was like, okay, yeah.
No, for real. I was like, there was one teacher in particular who was like, you didn't take those pictures.
Oh,
I was like, yeah,
what?
no, he was dead serious.
Why?
I don't know, because they were fucking good.
Wow, that's good.
They were. I wish I could find them back in the day.
Took these pictures.
They were like, for the camera I was using, it was pretty cool, I thought, at the time.
Cool.
Anyway. But yeah, so that is just me saying a word of showing my communicating my interests in like the natural world, and alongside photography I collect things. Do you know what I mean? I love picking things up, like rocks and leaves and just natural objects really. And I suppose that came with when I was my thing when I travel, like I don't really get souvenirs. Like my souvenirs is like a rock. Do you know what I mean? Or something, or a shell or something. I have a whole collection. Before as you can see on the windowsill, like everything in here is for sale as well. So I had to, like, I am a shop as well.
Okay.
So, but before I had everything, I used to mix everything up. Like I had all sorts of weird stuff from like my travels across like Central and South America, rocks and twigs and branches and this thing here.
So going through the airport, it was like, amazing. Going through customs. Oh, that's cool.
It's cool, isn't it? Yeah, it's like a little music. I took that off a tree. I took that off a tree in Senegal. Yeah, it's like a seed pod, but then I got that when it was green and fresh, and it's just hardened like that. Oh. So yeah, this is a piece of art to me.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna ask, is it like an object or something?
No, it seems like a musical instrument, isn't it? Yeah. And I literally just plucked it off a tree, and then it just dried. So. And then that's when, even my brother, he went traveling around Indonesia, and he knows me, and it's like, what can I get Christian? And he got me this volcanic rock from from the volcano. I don't know which volcano, but I use it as an incense holder.
Wow.
So I like using things in the way they're not meant to be used as well.
Okay.
I like stacking things. So yeah, and then that's when it came. I feel like also the things like the objects that aren't the ceramics reflect like the natural found objects as well that I like to collect and just pick up in terms of the tones. Like that looks like a rock.
Yeah.
Shaped as a vase.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And in just terms of the tones, I feel like people would describe me as like an earthy person, I suppose.
Okay.
I'm always wearing like.
Do you describe yourself as an earthy person, or?
Yeah, I suppose I'm always wearing like green or brown or some shit. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so you know, and then the interest came into like the objects collecting when I was in lockdown, and I was looking around. I was in my bedroom. I was just like, it was like, do you know the 3 months proper lockdown? And was you in London in lockdown?
Yeah. I mean, London was pretty chill compared to Spain, but yeah.
Oh yeah, Spain and Italy, that was crazy.
So there's just prison, home arrest.
I was having the time of my life.
Yeah.
Oh my god, lockdown was so much fun. I was so busy with work. It was so.
What,
good.
in lockdown?
Yeah, in like proper lockdown. I had like one client who was like I was flying with.
Really?
Oh my! It was the best time ever.
Flying like outside the country?
No, like flying in terms of getting paid and doing great work.
Oh.
It was like commercial, but it was like there was some loophole with like commercial productions, but this production I was like mid lockdown, like shut down, but this production was still going. But it was like so strict on set. It was like police. It was. Like if your mask slipped down your face, you would get kicked off the set straight away. Like they had like an ambulance crew, like a team of paramedics, everything, and it was just like there was no slip ups. Like you had to be checked. You had to take a swab. Like every couple of hours, like they come and take your temperature check. It was crazy, but I was chilling because
you were working.
I was actually when that happened, I was still working part-time as well. Okay. So I was on furlough, so I was getting paid from my furlough job. Wow. And I was like doing commercial work, so it's a good time.
Yeah, and then you were in bed?
Oh yeah, and then I was in bed, chilling, and then it was, I just realised my room was very boring.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, it was... I'm actually thinking it's so crazy. I was like, wow, my room was boring for a long time. I mean, I didn't even have any plants in there. I must have just not really... I feel like, because I don't spend so much time inside. Do you know what I mean? I kind of just have...
I neglect my room a little bit.
I'm the type of person that's just bed. Just
out.
Like bed. Yeah, just like bed.
Out.
Yeah,
out.
Bed, out, clothing rail. And then,
But you had all these objects. So you said that this thing of collecting things instead of souvenirs.
Yeah, I used to have
it's been a thing.
Yeah, I used to have like rocks, like random stuff on the windowsill. It wasn't just the objects. I just started to think more about like an interior space and like, if I was to decorate this space, like how would I want it to be? I started to look into like fabrics and blankets and all sorts of things. I was like looking at those interior kind of spaces with plants. I went to B&Q and bought like 5 like jungle plants, and I just stuffed the place with plants. I think everyone was doing this. Do you know what I mean? In lockdown, there was like this massive boom in like plants. People buying like house plants.
Yep.
Still, but it wasn't just a phase because all the plants I got in lockdown, they are thriving. I'll have to show you actually. I got this rubber plant and it was tiny. It was like less than 30 centimeters, and now it's like 6, like almost 7 foot tall. It's massive.
Well, you say it sounds like you were, but you.
I mean, I've always.
You always liked plants.
Yeah, but I never had them. Maybe because it's like a thing. Like I never was good with pets as a child. They always died eventually, so I was like, maybe I was.
Fucking up. Jesus.
No, I blame my parents because they just let me get any pet that I wanted. They just let me get any.
Parents,
They let me get any animal that I wanted.
So you were saying before that you. Well, it's interesting because it sounds like the camera was more used for you to look at nature. Do you see what I mean? Like, I don't know if it was more about the photography or the nature. Because you're saying, I was taking this picture of these butterflies.
Yeah.
What do you think was more interesting for you? The photography or the nature?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I think because, I suppose photography is like always just been the easiest tool for me to express myself. Do you know what I mean? I've never really been so good at writing. Even from a young age, I've just always been fascinated with like flowers and insects as well. So another thing I used to be the nerdiest person when I was a kid. I used to keep insects as pets. Like I used to have...
Okay, that explains if they all die.
Oh yeah, no, I used to have stick insects. I used to have praying mantises.
Okay.
Like
those are interesting.
Really crazy ones. I had like really rare ones from like I had an orchid mantis. I had like a ghost mantis, which was like a dead leaf. I was good at looking after these things. I used to have this like my desk was like with all these little pots with all these like insects.
Really?
I was super nerd.
That's quite interesting. I got a friend that's a biologist. Every time we go out, we stop. He leans and he looks at this bug or something, and he's like, "Oh, this is this." And I think I appreciate more that. I mean, I always liked animals, but I think never. I don't think I ever, had them at home or anything. But yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a 50. I guess the love obviously began with nature, the butterflies, the flowers, the insects, and photography was just the easiest tool for me to use to document that, and that just began how I was so I was much more. Well, I wouldn't say I was introverted. I was very quite sociable. I spent a lot of time by myself, but I was also good at talking to people. Do you know what I mean? I'd go up and just make friends with anyone and just chat to people about whatever, even if they weren't interested in listening to me. I'd be like, that kid where my parents would have to pull me away and be like, stop bothering this guy, man. Just leave the person alone. He doesn't want to know about your insect collection. So yeah, no.
So that took you into photography.
So I guess that's where my journey in photography started, and then I suppose I did photography. Well, not just photography, but I did like art and design in college. I went to the same art college as my dad, Batley School of Art in Dewsbury. Oh, Batley.
Where is Dewsbury?
Yeah, Dewsbury / Batley.
Where is that?
It's like up in West Yorkshire, where
West
I'm
Yorkshire.
from. Yeah. So I was born in Huddersfield.
Huddersfield.
Yeah, big up Huddersfield. I have to give Huddersfield a shout out, HUD. And I went to school in Batley, Batley School of Art, and I did like a BTEC art and design, classic. And obviously you could focus on a variety of different practices, and then I decided to focus on photography, and I suppose that's when I started to become a little bit more sociable and move away from photographing insects and started to photograph people.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I started to start to do like events and stuff like that in like the town, and like take portraits of like classmates and stuff like that as well.
How long do you think, retrospectively now, I guess, like looking back, is there a point where you felt like, oh, now I'm doing this thing I like, and at the same time I'm getting paid for it?
Yeah, I mean, it took me ages to get. I mean, the thing is with me, I'm such a slow moving person. I should have been. I guess I was dabbling in it. I've always done photography, like without a doubt. I've probably taken some breaks from it. I moved to London when I was 19 to study at the London College of Fashion, and I did a BA in fashion photography. Dropped out, classic. Because it was just too much fashion for me. And I guess, just been since then, between like 20 and 25, I was just shooting, random bits, figuring out what I wanted to do, doing random bits of paid work, but never really enough to go fully freelance. Do you know what I mean? So I'll be doing like a bit of retail work, shooting like 1-2 days, and then something would come through, and then I'd stop doing that, and then just finding that balance really, but also I guess always figuring out what your visual language is, and what you're actually trying to say, and how you would like to make money. Sometimes you don't always have that luxury, I think, I think actually this year has been a scramble for a lot of photographers in the industry who've caught them. Not many people are actually freelance these days, are fully freelance. You know, a lot of people are doing so many other different types of work that they wouldn't have even imagined themselves doing. Yeah, I'm grateful that I'm able to just about keep a roof over my head with photography in this current climate. It's a bit crazy right now.
Yeah. Was there do you remember a commission or a first commission that you were like, I really like that. So like, this is interesting and I'm getting paid.
Probably. I mean, I've done something interesting.
No, for you, like as a first time, was there a first time where like, oh, this is different to do you see what I mean? Where maybe looking back at it now, the first thing that is more of what you do now. Does that make sense?
Do you know what? I probably wouldn't even have got... That wasn't even that long ago. That was... I mean, I would say maybe... I mean, I've done a few, like, random, interesting commissions. I love, you know, when, I guess, it was mostly portraiture that I was getting earlier on in the day, like, random kind of community projects and commissions from, like, councils and things like that. But I guess probably my favourite commission I've ever worked on, where I was like, which aligns with the kind of direction that I'm wanting to go in now, was when I did the story on British biodiversity when I was doing the temperate rainforests south of England. That was, which is the image right in front of me. I thought I'd start with that actually. But yeah, I suppose it felt, because when I photographed this story, it felt like a full circle moment for me. You know what I mean? It was like, this is like the dream project, like young Christian would have like loved to work on. It's not quite the dream National Geographic commission yet, but yeah, it felt the closest to that. The closest I've been to that so far.
Was that a reference? Like growing up, was National Geographic like a...
Well, yeah, I mean, flicking through old geographic magazines, learning about the geographic explorers, you're like, oh man, that sounds cool. I'd love to do that. I'd love to be sent off around the world and get commissioned to take portraits of really interesting cultures and lands and just fly off everywhere. I suppose, I mean, I've done stuff like that, but just through my own projects, paying for myself to go to these places, but not on like a commission basis.
So the project, you want to explain what it's about? I've read the article.
All right, okay.
But if you want to explain.
Yeah, so this commission came about, this was for Atmos, which is like a climate and culture magazine. I'd actually got connected with them through a project I shot the previous year. Was it the previous year? Yeah, like 22. When I'd travelled to Ecuador and I did this story in this biological research facility, and they'd bought the licensing for that. And then the next year, Willow, who's one of the co-founders of Atmos, was working on this book, working on like the first book for Atmos. And then there was just like they had like certain themes. She was writing all these kind of short stories, like meditations on natures and different ideas, and then she was commissioning stories from different photographers around the world that aligned with these short stories and these meditations. And there was something, I think it was something to do with like fungi and decay and like rebirth and things like that. And I'd been working on this project over the past probably like 3-4 years, on orchids native to England.
Okay.
And I'd shared some of the stuff that I've been doing with the orchids, and then I'd also shared with them what I'd learned about temperate rainforests in England, because that's something I'd not known about.
Yeah, I found out only like not long ago.
Yeah, it was super fascinating. I was like, whoa, what is this? What are these places? These places are crazy.
Yeah, they look crazy.
I mean, yeah, they're
witchy.
Witchy.
There's something
no, there is. I mean,
it's
kind of connected to those ideas, like old kind of like English folklore, and like druids and spiritual places where there's these like old stone circles and like silence. Yeah, it's beautiful, but it is eerie at the same. Some of these places are eerie at the same time. Yeah, some of them, they're crazy. I mean, it's like in my memory of finding these places, it was like there's all sorts of like horror, like kind of horror stories about the moors, you know, like in Dartmoor, you know, like you know, the hills and the moors, it gets very like foggy, you know what I mean? It's so misty, like people get lost there, like quite often, yeah, because it's so, the fog is so thick and it comes down so fast, it's really disorientating. And then the bogs, you can get stuck in the bogs, like it's deep, you can just be walking and just go shut.
Really?
Yeah, it's scary. You know, so we was like, me and my partner at the time, we was like marching, and it was like wind, hail, rain, just like, it was just crazy, like weather. And we was like, had these plastic bags, you know, you have like, not like a rain jacket, it was wearing like a plastic bag.
Yeah, like a poncho.
Yeah, poncho sort of thing. And yeah, it was intense. And then it was like, can't even see where you're going. And then all of a sudden, like through the mist, you see this like forest grove like appear right in the distance. It was scary, but like, yeah. And it's I remember going, especially this particular grove. This one, it's kind of like out of the way, Blackator Copse. It's like just this random kind of segregated grove, and it's a bit of a mission to get to. But it was totally worth it because that's where I took that photograph. But it's like you enter it, you know, you step outside into it, and it's just like it feels like you're crossing over into a completely like different realm. It does. It feels like just like everything just like stops, like just so quiet. You just get this like hyper clarity, and everything is just like the colours. But you do feel like it's like just a world distinct from everything else. Really beautiful. You feel like you just want to be careful. Do you know what I mean? See that? You definitely got that on the mind.
Definitely got it. You want to be careful? What do you mean?
No, just, you know, when someone replied, when I put it on my story, someone replied to it, and they was like, "Oh, are you in one of the temperate rainforests in Dartmoor?" She was like, "Oh, my mum used to say when you're walking through the woods, she said you better take your shoes off, otherwise you'll piss off the fairies." That's what she said.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like there's a side of England that I really want to know more about, because I feel like there's something about the way it's shown, like English identity, to be very like taking out a lot of folklore elements, and I think I find it very interesting. So the culture, because a lot of times, like, I don't know, I connect Englishness to other things, or to Britishness, right?
Yeah, I don't even know what. Do you know what I'm thinking? I still don't know what Englishness is. Like, what is Englishness? When I think about British culture, I still don't know what that is. But yeah, I mean, there is so many. There's a friend of mine that is doing like a series of like kind of like folk traditions.
Should we stop?
All right, are you gonna catch?
Just because it's gonna go beep beep beep. Right, I think I had. What you were saying that.
About the folklore traditions. Yeah. No, I mean, no. There's definitely a whole other side to explore in that. That's like definitely a whole other world. There's so many different practices and traditions that go across England.
Because it's interesting, like that you have like that growing up in England, because that place is in England, is it? Where you grew up.
Where I grew up, in Huddersfield.
It's not Wales or Scotland.
No, it's not.
Sorry, I'm terrible at geography.
No, same.
No discrimination against the north. I really like, everyone's very friendly. I really want to go. Apart from that, but it's interesting that the English like folklore never really attract you much or interested.
No, I guess, I mean, yeah, it's a weird one. Obviously, growing up, my connection to my heritage and culture is a bit all over the place. I don't really know, because I grew up with my mum, who is white, and she was born in Huddersfield herself, and but with my immediate family around me was my Jamaican family. Do you know what I mean? Like my black family. So like most of my mum's, I had my granddad up to a little while. He lived not far from me, but then my aunties and uncles, they all like migrated to Australia. I'd never been to Australia. So I kind of grew up with my white mum, but then surrounded by my Jamaican family in England, but I've never been to Jamaica either. So I never really, I didn't know what, in terms of like British culture or folklore, I didn't have a clue about any of that. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know what traditions they were. Do you know what I mean? I didn't really, if there was any traditions my white side of my family did, I didn't know about them, to be honest. I didn't spend much time with them. So, except my granddad, but he passed when I was quite young as well. So, I think I've always been, it's been more of a question of wanting to know more about my Jamaican heritage than my English heritage. But funnily enough, I feel like the exploration of plants and biodiversity and the natural world in England is my exploration of my British heritage.
Oh, it's interesting that you did one about orchids in the UK. Why orchids?
I mean, because I've always been fascinated by orchids, just them as their visual appearance, their actual visual appearance, and just in their relation to everything around them. Do you know what I mean? The way they mimic life and things.
What do you mean?
Like
I don't know much about
you
orchids.
have orchids that look. You have orchids that look like mimic people. You have orchids that mimic flowers. You have ones that give off certain pheromones that attract certain insects to pollinate them. You have ones that mimic particular species of like bees. You have, for example, you have this is one I've never seen before, but an orchid you can find in Tottenham. Round here. No, seriously, it's called a bee orchid. And it looks like a bee. It like mimics a bee.
Oh, really? In Tottenham?
Apparently you can find them in the Tottenham
But
marshes.
is it like endemic too? It's like exclusive to...
No, you can find them in different parts across England, but I'd heard you can find them, but they're so hard to find. Like people obviously, when we think about orchids, we think about the big plants that you find in like Tesco's, you know, like Tesco's orchids. You get them for like £5 or whatever. And but orchids in England, they're tiny, but they are so fascinating. Like when you do find them, it's like treasure. They're just like, oh my god, these are so crazy. Like the ones, so you have to understand, like the picture you're looking at, that is tiny. Those flowers are like this big. They're like this big. They're absolutely minute. I've got like this makeshift backdrop. Mm-hmm. And I'm like laying on the grass, like with my little macro lens and zooming in. You can even see like the insects and the spiders in between. You know, so this bee orchid, it gives off the scent and attracts the female counterpart of this particular species of bee, and it comes and pollinates other plants. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. And there's an orchid there in England that mimics butterflies. There's an orchid that looks like a lizard. Okay. There's some really crazy flowers in England, and I think in terms of, rather than all these kind of strange folklore traditions, just learning about the land that I was born in is my way of connecting to it and like exploring that through like flowers and plants. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, fair.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for whoever is listening, there's the orchid picture we're talking about is the one your profile picture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I imagine I'm quite interested to know what traveling what's your approach to traveling? Because you do photograph while you're traveling. When you're traveling and photographing, like, how do you go about it? Is it very like more instinctive, or you're looking for certain things to?
I mean, I guess that it's more. I mean, I didn't really travel too much until when was it? In beginning of like 21. That's when I had like my travel kind of spree sort of thing, because I suppose had the money to do it and just move around. I'm the type of person to just make things up as I go along. I'm just like, oh, this place looks cool, and just kind of turn up. I don't plan ahead too much. I kind of like maybe have an idea. So even, for example, my work from, I don't know if you saw any of my work from Sri Lanka, and I did my first exhibition of a series that I shot traveling around Sri Lanka.
The river
that flows
through me, flows through you,
flows in, yeah, something like that.
I mean, I was gonna ask about the title.
The river that flows in you also flows in me.
Yeah. I was gonna ask about the title. Like, what was?
How
come
the title is inspired by this book actually that is in the shelf over here called Kabir. So this book is called Kabir, the Weaver of God's Name, this exact same edition. So I just love finding things. But when I was in Sri Lanka and I was staying with this like Buddhist monk, he was like, "Oh, you need this book," and it's about Kabir, this prophet's life and short stories about him. And there's a quote in there somewhere, and it's, you know, and it basically says, "The river that flows in you also flows in me."
What does that mean to you?
It's kind of just a way of saying that we're all connected, you know? It's that we all have similar ideas, similar thoughts, similar feelings, and I think because when I was traveling through Sri Lanka and I was learning about the history, obviously, like the Civil War, all the conflicts, but I just felt when I went there, I was just overcome by the spiritual side of things. You know what I mean? Like the ceremonies, the sacred spaces, the temples. Obviously, it's kind of like it seems almost split between the Buddhist and Hindu communities, but then there's also these threads of understanding and mutual respect of each other and each other's traditions and cultures. And I wanted to document that in a series of images, and that this wasn't me. This was no planning. This was me just being. Do you know what I mean? That's when I was like, this is when I'd spent the first time I'd spent so much time alone and just by myself and just like absorbing and just like being present and watching things, watching people. I just go somewhere and just sit and just watch.
Really?
I'd just go off. I'd be walking. I'd just get someone. I might get like a tuk-tuk. Have you seen? You know what a tuk-tuk is like?
Oh yeah.
Those little cart things. Yeah. And I'd just get dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and I'd just walk. I'd walk out in like along the high road and just chat. I'd stop and chat to people, or sit somewhere and just kind of like, especially in the light in Sri Lanka was just phenomenal. Like the golden hours, the sunsets, and just watch like light move around. I'd choose a space. I might be walking through somewhere, traveling through somewhere, and see a particular road or a particular space, or it might be in a temple that I've come to, and I've been like, this place is beautiful, but now is not the right time. But I'm gonna come back here and
right time for
something. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like it's not the right time, but I'm gonna come. Maybe I'm probably particularly talking about the light. I feel like I need to see this space in a particular light, so I'm gonna come back here at a certain time and then see what's happening. And sometimes, you know, that's when it comes to intuition as a photographer. If you're wanting to capture something, but I'd maybe just go back to this space or this particular area and just see what's happening at that time when the light is hitting it in the right way. Do you know what I mean? There was one example of that. I think that's when I feel like when I was in Sri Lanka, I learned more about storytelling and watching things unfold.
Okay.
And kind of guessing things before they were about to happen, or imagining what could happen, but just off a hunch of like, oh, maybe something might go on here.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because I was just zipping around on like a moped. I'd have my camera on my back, and I was just going off in any direction, traveling for miles and miles and miles along the north of Sri Lanka. I was in Anuradhapura, and I think it was in preparation. I think it was called the Full Moon Festival, and it's where they're gathering.
Sounds massive.
Oh God, it's so beautiful. It's this everyone's like dressed in white, and you know, obviously paying homage to the Buddha, and the people present flowers and fruits and all sorts of things. So they grow, you know, there's flowers everywhere, and I think they grow like thousands or millions of purple lotus flowers, and the lakes are just full of purple lotuses. It's just absolutely it's just mind blowing. And I was going around the bend of this lake, and I saw this whole area was just full of these lotus flowers, and I was like, there was no one in the area, but I was like, oh my God, like I feel like this is so beautiful. It was like more midday. I was like, I need to come back here when the sun's setting a little bit and the light's just hitting it right. And I drove off. This was like in the morning, and I came back towards the end of the day, that same route. And then on the way back, there was a family there, and there was a boy with a bucket wading through the water collecting these flowers. And I was just like, you know, when you just like, oh my God, this is perfect. And then I just like, I felt that, you know, you got to like, kind of just, you know, you never blend in, because I'm like, I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. This is in COVID times when I'm traveling through Sri Lanka. So people's like, who is this random black guy walking around with this big ass camera, you know what I mean? Just like trying to act.
Global pandemic and you're like...
Yeah, literally not trying to, they're just like, what the hell? Anyway. But yeah, so then I'm kind of just sat now parked up with my camera, just trying to document this and capture the boy, and then I'm trying to speak to his mum. There's zero English whatsoever. Yeah. But you know, you learn through body language. You know, you learn to communicate in other ways, especially when you can't use your words, and you just learn. You know, you approach, you obviously know, most people know what a camera is, and then you just like, I'm just like pointing and just, you know, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but yeah, it's just like really beautiful to see what happens when people from completely different spaces connect.
I mean, I think that...
Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent.
No, that's good. I think that, for example, that title about the river and that explanation you give, I feel like it's interesting because in your photography, it's interesting how you photograph everyone, artists, or like, I feel like even for example, there's one picture of Steve McQueen. I don't know why, that's one of the ones that I have in my head, but it's like everyone feels like people, because I feel like sometimes, you know, and then there's nothing wrong about approaching celebrities in a special way, which is how usually it's photographed, and not to say that it's not special, don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to say, I think, is like, it feels like, you know, that a child in, I think there was one in Ecuador or something. Yeah, it feels like everyone is people. So like, it feels like, and I was wondering, is it similar when you're photographing someone like, let's say, Steve McQueen? Is your approach similar, or like, how do you go about it in terms of like, how do you prepare that? Do you know? Do you?
I mean, it's more, I feel like when it's such more, the circumstances when I'm doing my travel portraiture, they're so much more spontaneous, like a spur of the moment, kind of on the go. Sometimes I have more time. It's a little bit more relaxed. I guess it's hard to compare the two, especially when the kind of portraiture stuff that you see with more known sitters such as like Steve McQueen, it's always very like you have to, you know, it's not glamorous. It's not like, we're hanging out, we're having a chat, and like, hey Steve, how was your day? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I've got lunch in like 10 minutes, can you hurry the F up? Do you know what I mean? So, he wasn't like that. He wasn't like that.
No, but
it is the vibe. It is the vibe. Yeah, it's like, it's like stressful, it's like sweaty. You know, you're trying to, obviously, you want to, as a portraiture photographer, you want to capture the most intimate side and like an authentic side of someone, but it's so hard to do that when you've got, it's not, you know, sometimes you just get what you get, do you know what I mean? And then I like to talk, I think it's really good for photographers to talk more about the behind the scenes, like the reality, because portraits can be so deceiving of a moment, do you know what I mean? Like of the feeling it gives the viewer as opposed to the feeling of the actual moment itself. Do you know what I mean?
That's the magic, I think.
No, it is. But I like breaking that down. Do you know what I mean? I like showing people, no, this is actually what the situation. This is actually what the situation was. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's nice. You know, you capture. You know, you meet really, especially when some people you need to warm up to. You have a bit of time and you're trying to make small talk and break them. Steve McQueen is a very, you know, I can tell is like an intense thinker. Yeah, it's just people are just different. Do you know what I mean? Some people give more in terms of their time and energy, and they just focus on their own thing. When people have just got a million things in their mind, it's hard for them to engage with everyone in like an authentic and kind way. Or
and I think also. Oh, sorry.
No, we just think we're going to get the best version of people. Sometimes we don't get the best version. We just get however they're feeling within that moment in time, and we have to make the best of it within that and convey what we can within a portrait. Do you know what I mean? So, and then the great thing is with doing stuff for the Financial Times, I've worked with so many different people, actresses, actors, directors, and one of the more recent ones, Ruth Negger, who I photographed for the Life and Arts. She's a character. She loves to, she's worked with like loads of great photographers. She likes to put on a performance. Do you know what I mean? She's bringing this whatever energy she wants. She can just be like, she's just like, what vibe do you want? Do you know what I mean? She's just like, comes and sit down, just like this, like slouching around, she's just messing around, just having a laugh. She can be serious, she can be fun. She's like, to her, it's like a job for her. Well, it is like her job. Do you know what I mean? She's an actress, so she's like, what do you want to see? But then, we're bouncing off each other. Like, what's your vibe? What are you trying to create right now? And what we're trying to, it turns into more of a collaboration then, which is really fun. So you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, what I was thinking about because at the end of the day, people is just people, and I think that's what I meant by this idea of like, I like the idea that whether it's an actress or whether it's like you're a gardener.
I think it's a combination of a few things. It's like there's all these different components that make up an image. It's like it's the sitter, it's the camera you use, the lens, the depth of field, the film, the way you print it, the paper you print it on. It all adds to the feeling of the final image. And I suppose that's it really, because a lot of people, what I suppose I'm known for is like soft, rich, warm images. They like always want rich, warm tones. They're always just like yellow in the bloody on the when I'm printing. Do you know what I mean? I just like things as warm as possible, really. And I guess that's it. It might have been a bit too what in hindsight. Actually thinking about those Steve McQueen images, it was so red, so rich. So I had like tungsten lighting, and then I had to
Oh, you had tungsten lighting?
Yeah, it was way too hot. You should have seen it. It was such a fire hazard. It was so bad. It was so bad because I was shooting in this like members lounge in like Soho. The ceiling was so low, and the guy, the assistant Jake, he was doing the lighting for me. It's like, bro, we're like, this is such a hazard right now.
Oh well.
But yeah, you do what you gotta do. Especially also, they only told me about that. I was here. I'm just doing some editing, and it's like 1:00 in the afternoon, and they called me and was like, "Oh, can you photograph Steve McQueen at 5:00?"
At 5?
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it work.
You just got to make it work. You do all sorts.
Wow.
All sorts.
4 hours.
Yeah, this is what I hate working under those conditions. I think that's why I've been fed up most of these shows. I'm like, I'm tired of running around, man. So I hate doing stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because it goes around the schedule of the person you're photographing.
Yeah,
most of the time, at least in my experience, that gets cancelled or not, or.
Yeah, it's nice to like photograph people you admire, I suppose, but I'm not chasing around after people. That's long.
Actually, and I'm interested. Is there any? Because you're talking about the behind the scenes. Is there any behind the scenes anything that you found? I wish I knew this about working as a photographer.
Sometimes we can get caught up photographing things that we think people want to see. I feel like you're trying to figure out what it is. Obviously, you've got the work that you want to shoot. You've got your personal projects and the stuff that you want to photograph, and then you're also figuring out you're not always going to get paid for the stuff that you actually want to photograph. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of photographers are trying to do this balance of presenting work that they're going to get paid to do and then shooting the work that they want to do. But I would say I would say it's best to produce the work that you want to get commissioned to do. Do you know what I mean? In the best way. You're always trying to think of like how you have to think, in order to make money, you have to think how people are viewing your portfolio and your work, and you have to constantly think about, how would if someone is potentially going to commission this, like who would commission this, and like where would this work go, and like what are the potential clients. I think it's good to have that awareness of like how you're going to make money, but also I think it's best to not to try and get caught up in like pleasing other people as well. Do you know what I mean? I think it's best to photograph the stuff that really aligns with you and your practice, and to be consistent doing that as well. I feel like people get caught up in creating like all these different sides of the portfolio, and it all just gets lost. There's no like distinction, there's no cohesiveness, there's no one style. It looks like workshop by multiple photographers and like different styles, because you can tell they're trying to appease loads of different clients. Like I'd rather just be known for shooting like once, even though it can be difficult at times. I'd rather be known to have like a consistent visual language and like something like a feeling that people associate me with. And I feel like I think I've done that. I think so. People associate with, even though I'm saying that, there's still so much like I'm wanting to explore as a photographer. I haven't really even shot anything that I've wanted for probably since like last year. I haven't really photographed anything. I've just got caught up in doing like editorial like portraits and stuff like that.
What is something that you're interested in photographing that you haven't had a chance yet?
Well, there was this project that I began in when I was in the Gambia. I was really inspired by the heavy kind of Jamaican community in the Gambia. They have like a massive Rastafarian community. So I was learning a lot about the culture there and speaking to different people, and I was like photographing doing like walking across like me as I do. I just get my camera and walk along like a long road and just chat to people, you know what I mean, and just sit with people and take random portraits. I was really interested about exploring Rastafarian communities, particularly in West Africa, and how that had been adopted by different ethnic groups, obviously in the Gambia you've got like the main groups are Wolof, Mandinka and Fulani, and they all had different interpretations of Rastafarianism and adopted aspects of Rastafarian culture, but in a way that also aligned with their traditional beliefs. And so I was interested in exploring that a little bit more. Definitely overdue to go back to the Gambia. Hope they get back there in January or February. But then I also that inspired me to look at a more contemporary culture of Rastafarian identity in the UK as well. So I think that was the first time. Also, I was more looking at, my Jamaican heritage and figuring out connections there. And so that's one thing that I'm still in the research phase of right now. I've just been caught up with doing so many other things, but that's definitely a project I'm looking forward to working on and developing in the new year. But now I suppose I'm still in the research phase of things.
I mean, fair enough, you've got a lot.
I've got a lot of books.
So
I have like a pile. That is supposed to be my research pile.
Is it?
But it's not. Now it's just lost in, because I have so many people that come here and pull things out, and I'm just like, it's all just lost, and now I need to dig out.
What's the reaction been? Like in terms of, or what do you...
The reactions to the space?
Yeah. Or like...
It's been overwhelming. It has been overwhelming. Yeah, it's crazy because, I had... because it like Seed as a space, I've had so many visitors. I've accommodated so many different people this year. I feel like I get frustrated because I feel like there's two, even though my photography feeds into Seed and Seed feeds into photography, I've been inspired even for new projects that I haven't even began to really kind of contextualize ideas that I have in my head that I'm wanting to work on next year. It's been interesting, but I've been like focusing on Seed and then doing the books, but then I'm like, there's this photography project, I ain't even started that. There's so much to do. I'm like funding, accommodating. It all makes sense, but there's just so many right now I'm only one person. People think Seed Archive. They think it's a whole team.
It's like a team.
No, they think I'm a team. No, because they're like, who's taking your pictures and who's doing the scanning? I'm like, who's doing the website? I'm like, me. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So it's so amazing. Like, even though I am quite hard on myself sometimes, because we're always hard on ourselves. We always think about the things we're not doing. Do you know what I mean? We've not done this. If we think about the things we're not doing, the list will go on forever and ever and ever. But I think we need to definitely spend more time appreciating the things that we are doing, and pat ourselves on the back for the things that we've accomplished. You know what I mean, as well, especially like with what's going on and like everything else in the world. It's so hard to keep on top of things. But yeah, like this year, not only just in London, but I've had this became a space where I wanted to connect people across the diaspora back to their heritage and culture. And I've been doing that. I have visitors pretty much every week, every Saturday. There's appointments, people to come in to visit. But I've also had visits from people all across West Africa. I've had people visit from South Africa, Zambia, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal. I have 3 different artists coming from Dakar this week as well. Some people coming, two artists coming on Wednesday. I have another one curator coming on Saturday. So, I had someone based in northern Nigeria who's seen a collection of books that I have, and they said they hadn't seen a collection of books so good since they left university in Nigeria. So, it's kind of crazy really how just all the connections that I've made, not just across England but across the continent itself, just by sharing books. And not only, that's inspired other people in ways that they've opened up their collections as well. So people have donated books and they've been like, oh, I really like what you're doing with Seed. People have just obviously looked at their own collections and been like, oh, actually, rather than having these books sit on a shelf somewhere where no one's ever going to see them, like, why don't they put them in a place where people actually have access to them? So then I've taken on other people's collections as well. So yeah, it's been overwhelming in a good way. But I'd never actually thought. Well, before I did it, I didn't know it was something that people needed.
But I mean, I was gonna say, like, it sounds like people are like craving.
Yeah, I mean, people love books. It's nice, and it's not only, but it's not just about showing people books. It's about presenting, like I said earlier, it's about presenting things in a way that is digestible to people, and then also, it's not like a big part of Seed is also documenting the experience. So obviously you go on Seed, I'm always like taking pictures of people reading, sharing ideas, and that's a big, you can't, when, I've had Seed on Instagram for like 3 years, but it's only in the past like half a year it's like jumped up in terms of people sharing, but it's mostly because I've opened up the space more and more and allow people to come in. And I'm like, you can't just grow things just by sharing things on Instagram or online. It has to grow through like real engagement and people coming in and talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you really have to, it's so much time and so much energy, but it's so rewarding because I've had people, I had a student from Central St. Martin's come on Saturday. I'm like, how did you find out about this place? He was coming to do, what was he researching? Art practices in Senegal. I was like, how do you find about here? It was like, my tutor told me about it. My lecturer said, so a lecturer at Central St. Martin's is telling his students to come here as like a point for research. I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's quite crazy.
And then I had a curator a few months ago, and I'm like, how did you find out about this place? She goes, some professor in Glasgow told me about it. Glasgow.
I feel like that's what Instagram
I'm
is.
Like, well, yeah,
no,
but you just never know. People don't even know exactly what it is, like what Seed is. They see it in like little. I don't think I've ever like shown the whole space, but it's just through little stories and corners and people like sharing books and I do little book giveaways and people just know.
Yeah, you do the books, you give away. I think there's something interesting because I feel like you seem to give a lot, as in not physically, but like I feel like like you open the space and you give. What was the idea behind giving away?
It started when I'd first hit like 1,000 followers on Instagram. I don't know why it took ages to reach like 1,000 followers. I was like, oh my god, it's like climbed so slowly to reach 1,000. So I was like, oh, just but it didn't feel like. I feel like the following that I've got on Seed is so like engaged in like it's a real like everyone. I've got so many different like curators, artists, designers. I know so many amazing people. I know like curators from like a lot of like major institutions, even like from like the Barbican, the V&A, the Tates, like all sorts of people, galleries. Follow Seed, I guess, for reference or whatever. But I kind of did once I'd reached 1,000. I thought, oh wow, that's really crazy. It's taken ages to get here. So I did like a book giveaway. I was like, oh, just to celebrate of like, not to celebrate like, I never saw it as like a following, but like,
I'm good.
yeah, I never saw it as like a following, but an actual full engaged real community. Do you know what I mean? I was like, wow, 1,000 people, that's crazy. And just really beautiful. And I thought, yeah, actually let me celebrate this by giving away something like a book. So, I kind of started to find books, copies of books that I already have. And then, I just was like, oh, the first people. It's always about, Seed is about bringing people into a space that they didn't already know or know what's here. So I'm always trying to encourage people to go out of their way and like bring people to a new space or a place they've never been to before. Yeah, because Tottenham to a lot of people is out of the way. Do you know what I mean? It's so hard. Tottenham. It's so hard to bring people here. They're just like, oh my god.
Okay, I'll leave your book.
Even when I'm giving away free things, it's hard to get. I've still got a book from like the last giveaway that no one came to collect.
Really?
Well, it was like rain. It was like a really crap day. Maybe on a day like today, it's like the better when people feel like trekking out. I get messages all the time just saying how grateful they are like this space exists. Do you know what I mean? People. It seems to make people really happy, and that makes me happy really. And when you do something, it is so draining, especially because it requires me to be on like Instagram a lot and share things and like share stories. Like there's no getting around that. When it really is like food for the soul, and there's purpose in it. There's purpose in the work I do as a photographer, and I'm really enjoying that. I'm really excited about blending Seed and my photography a little bit more and exploring projects that kind of explore, material cultures and objects across Africa. And there's researchers who have been using Seed as like a resource and figuring out how we can collaborate as like between myself as a photographer, less as Seed and more as a photographer. So yeah, it's really.
Why is it called Seed?
Seed was inspired. So
it all goes back to plants. I really like it.
Yeah. So Seed was inspired by a book I was reading in lockdown called Zen, and this is nothing to do with what.
I thought it was Wild Seed because I saw.
Oh yeah, Wild Seed by Octavia Butler. No, I haven't. All right, so I also have, even though the books are generally, because I collect objects, so the books are generally on like material cultures across the continent. I have a growing collection of Caribbean literature and poetry as well. I'm still trying to find my way in poetry. There's very few. I love poetry, but there's only very few pieces that really resonate. But when I find a good poetry book and then it like really reaches deep into you, I'm like, yeah, this is incredible. But a lot of the visitors here really like poetry, and I'm always finding, I feel like you can't just have books on one particular subject. You need like threads that's like poetry or people writing about ideas of connecting to their heritage and different ideas and inspired by different cultures. And I'm always I like putting the books written by like Caribbean authors alongside books on like African art and culture. And there's all these different ideas different like random connections, and they both feed into each other, and it's really interesting to to put them in a space and see how people react to it. Really, there's things I don't read. I skim. I'm not a heavy reader. That's what I want people to know. Sometimes I'm like, people think I've like read every single book, but I do have a good idea of what's in the collection, and I'm able to pull things out for people. Do you know what I mean? So I'm able to be like, oh, this one, when people say they're coming here for certain research, I'm able to be like, oh, this was...
Yeah, because you know the theme.
Yeah.
Maybe, no? That's not how mentally you seem to organize it. It's more by...
Yeah.
Or what it concerns, like what it deals with, more broadly than just like, oh, it's just sculpture, just this. Just
yeah, no, I mean, it is fun to be able to... I'm good at helping people with their own research. Do you know what I mean? And I like... I'm probably going to do a little bit more of that actually, like a little like research assistance. Right, I've lost myself now.
Why you call it seed?
Oh, seed. Sorry.
You were reading a book.
Sorry. See that I just go trail off into into the vortex.
It's part of it.
I was reading a book on lockdown. Oh, it's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by. Have you heard of the book?
No.
I
was trying to follow Zen and the Art of Motorcycle.
Sorry, I was like, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert M. Persig or Robert E. Persig. He's like an American author and I believe he's a psychologist. But he's basically, it's basically a story of him traveling across like North America, I think. He's doing like a motorcycle trip with his son. Yeah, it's like this really interesting journey and his like kind of philosophical observations of life and all these short stories. It's like going kind of connections to psychology and Buddhist ideas, I suppose. And basically it was years ago I read this book now, but he's talking about all these ideas and making sense of things. And it's like there's this particular moment in the book when he's talking about all these different ideas merging together and making sense. It's like everything just making sense, and he calls it the seed. It's like this is it. It's like he calls it the seed crystal, of just like the crystallization of all these different ideas and everything coming together. And seed was that for me. It's like, oh, like this thing of like all these like objects, space. I was like, oh, this thing can be. I think I was gonna call it like seed crystal at first, and I was like, you know, when you chat to your friends, I was like, this is like the conversation. Just when seed was an idea, a good friend of mine, Io, we used to train together in the park. We used to do like the bars, like the calisthenics, and I'm like, tell me about this book, and then I'm like, oh, I have an idea for this space, and like start selling objects, and I call it seed crystal. It's like, not seed crystal. It's like, nah,
not the crystal.
It's like not the crystal. I don't know. I didn't write seed. It's like, bro, just call it seed. I'm like, and then, you know, me just having a million ideas of not knowing what I want to do, or like, he loved it. He like, you know where you have friends that just like, yeah, do it. You know, you have friends who like rein you in, like to say, is this what you really want to do? And then you have friends like Io is the type of person to be like, if you don't do it, I'm gonna do it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna say it's that type of guy. He's just messing him, but you know, I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it.
Well, thank you to him.
Yeah, no, he's and Io actually. Io is someone I've collaborated on like multiple events with Seed this year as well. He runs an agency called Explorers Club, so we do like this games night together. But yeah, so that's how Seed was born. Really, Seed Crystal. Seed was things making sense.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it grows.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure as well. And we had the most beautiful day for it as well, kind of like watching the light move across the studio as we had this conversation as well. Yeah,
and I feel like everyone check out the photography. Everyone, if they can, check out and come and see the books. Whoever's listening. Yeah, and I love it. I feel like it's super interesting, and I think that's what I really like is how I'm very interested to see how it combines. And yeah, I don't know. I think I find it rare that people are giving to random people for no reason, or like there is a reason, but like, you know, like giving a book or like opening the space, and I think that clearly that people are looking for that, and I feel like that is really amazing. So like generally, like I think, again, by the response you get, you can tell that it doesn't happen often, and I think, and it's amazing that it's also giving purpose and combining slowly with the photography. So yeah, looking forward to see how it grows.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.